some music going. Going around on this until we get crashed out on this too, which is probably gonna happen, because that's... You know. We're gonna look at some PD2 videos, we're gonna look at some inspired learning podcasts while we play. I'm gonna turn the heat on. Oh yeah, and this new Golem guide that came out. Alright.
Hey guys, Matthew, and today
Listen to
I want
Path
to
of
bring you guys a
Math
video
for
on
33 minutes.
post-party.
Nah, you know what? I'm gonna chill on that.
The warmth of luck.
Listen to Noodles. 1 minute, second, 34-second take on day 1 recap. Alright, I gotta go potty though. Let me go do that. And then we'll play. Okay. So let me set Alright, we back. Probably still can't play her shit. You know. Whatever. We pimpin'. I'm gonna be check, but I'm scared to check. I'm like super terrified to check. Because I don't want to lose this character. I don't know why I made another life. In fact, you know what? We're just starting out. We're quitting. We're quitting. We're gonna check out my Druid. Oh my god, he's up. Great game. Shit. Great. 2. Great. Oh, he's up. He's not up. I lied. I lied. He's not up. Come on. Game. Please. Oh. Come. No. The hope. The hope was there. Character is stuck. Character stuck. Fuck it. Should I do the assassin? Should I do a fire sack? I don't want to do a fire sack. What else is big? No. Maybe. What's free? What's free? I guess sorc, yeah. Alright. Get at it. Just can't hang, dude. Alright, alright. Let's get them videos going.
Life has entered my tomb.
What up, gang? It's Noodle from PD2, and I wanted to give you a quick recap on how day one went. It all started with a DM from the hilarious Diablo YouTuber Frankie Fresh.
Hey.
We started chatting away a couple of days before season launch and quickly learned that we'd be new BFFs. We got on Discord on Monday morning and shared backstories, got breakfast, held hands, and even snuggled a little bit before absolutely fucking murdering all the demons of hell. We washed the den of evil floor with the blood of the innocent. Then we disconnected and got rolled back. And then we did it again and saved Kane's sorry ass. And disconnected again. And then we did it again and we cleared all the way to Catacombs level 1. And then we disconnected again. And then we did it 4 more times because that's what you do on launch day. You get back up and you keep going. Shortly after face rolling Andy, we learned how to save and quit after any noticeable milestone. And we ran through the sands of Act 2. We kicked Blood Witch in the dick for the Q. We raided the Maggot Lair and the Viper Temple. We shoved the Herodic Staff clear up dirty blood-like ass. And then the server went down for a little bit. And then we tore out Mephisto's spine, gave Diablo a soul-ripping ass-kicking, faced off with the Ancients on the summit, and finally pounded Bale's balls into the World Summit for a butcher on Main Street. I guess you could say it had as many ups and downs. Through it all, friendships were made that could last a lifetime. Stay tuned for a 1-week recap to see how RNGesus has treated us, and expect another class build here in the next 7 days, as long as time permits. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you in
Okay. Pause. 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 Alright, let's listen to Path of Math talk about Harvesters.
Nerf crafting and what it's going to look like. Now, this is not a meme video where I'm just going to be closing my eyes and slamming a bunch of exalts on items. I actually want to show you guys how Harvest is going to be used going forward if they go through the nerf. Before I get going with the video, though, there is something I need to talk about. This is not a contradictory video to the last one where I said that Harvest was dead. I think a lot of people didn't pay attention to my opening
This place is trouble.
Where I said that the way I was looking at it in that video was from the perspective of the average player, not a 1%er. For the people who are gods at PoE, right? For the people who are crafting legends, for the very knowledgeable players, the players who play a lot, the players who make a lot of currency, Harvest is still going to be a very powerful tool. But for the average Joe who only gets a few hours a day, who gets to the end game, but who doesn't make these 10 exalt per hour ridiculous amounts of currency, I will stand by my statement that I said in my other video that Harvest is going to be dead for those players. Now, is it going to be completely useless? No. But is it going to be in a place where it's worth even going into the garden to complete the harvest? In most cases, unless you really care about the things like divination card crafts and, you know, the random uniques and the random, socket crafts, colors and all that, from a pure crafting point of view, for the average player, Harvest is indeed going to be pretty useless. And this is what I want to showcase in this video, but I also want to give you guys the rule set of how the new Harvest post-nerf is going to work. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, let's get into the actual video. So, first things first, I do want to say something though, and that is that there is a little bit of an unclear statement here. They say, the manifesto says that all annulment mods are going to be gone from the game, right? But they're keeping the ones that remove a non-specific type to a specific type. So, for example, non-cold to cold, non-fire to fire, etc. After that, they say that you're only going to be able to apply augments to non-influenced item. So, there's a little bit of an unclear, a little bit of a gray area here where we aren't totally sure, depending on who you ask, if we are going to be able to use a non-X to X on an influenced item.
I can't.
Because I want to be fair and
can't
because
use this yet.
obviously we don't know, I'm going to be doing this video with the assumption that you cannot use a non-X to X on an influenced item. Now, if you can use a non-X to X on an influenced item, things are going to change pretty drastically. But because we don't know, we're going to go with the assumption that we can't. Alright, so let's get right into it. First off, we need to talk about the way that harvest crafting post-nerf is going to be nowadays. The new most important mod, which used to be augment a new influence, or for example, remove a random modifier and add a new modifier, right, of that type, are all going to be gone, right? There's no more removes, and augments are not usable on influenced items. So what you can use on influenced items are reforges and rerolls. So here's an interesting modifier here, and this is basically going to apply to all of the different types: physical, cold, lightning. Reforge a rare item with a new modifier, including a caster, fire, cold, etc. modifier. Including is basically the equivalent of saying augmenting, right? It is going to be adding a new modifier. The thing is here, if you are going to be reforging your item, you are basically going to be breaking the item, right? Whatever is on the item is going to be disappearing, and it's going to be changed for a bunch of new modifiers, including, which means +1, of a modifier of a given type. But there is a way to take advantage of this, and that's basically what I want to explain in this video. Now, I'm not going to go through every single different things and crafts that you are going to be able to do this with. I want to give you guys the actual rule set so that you can go after and learn by yourself which modifiers you are going to be able to force on and which ones you are not going to be able to force on. So before that though, I do need to give a little bit of an explanation to the newer crafters among us, and that is basically very, very simple. There are prefixes in this game and there are suffixes. Now I'm sure that most people understand this, but one thing that is basically overlooked by a lot of people is that there are some bench mods which allow you to basically manipulate your prefixes and your suffixes in a very interesting way. And the modifiers that I'm talking about are either prefixes cannot be changed, suffixes cannot be changed, cannot roll attack modifier, and cannot roll caster modifiers. Cannot roll attack and caster modifiers are very simple. It means that if you have this on your item and you, for example, used an exalt or something, there is no way that you are going to get a modifier that is locked behind either attack or caster modifiers. Now the tags are basically easy to see on PoE Ninja, or sorry, on PoEDB or on Craft of Exile. It's basically these little tags. So, for example, on a body armor, there are not very many attack mods. There is critical, and that's it, pretty much. There's attacks have critical strike chance. So what that means is that if I had cannot roll attack modifiers and I augmented an attack, or sorry, a critical stat, there is 0% chance that I can get this from it. Now, of course, because there are no other critical stats other than spell crit, that would mean that we can guarantee spell crit. That was basically the idea behind the old pre-nerf harvest crafting, at least when it came to blocking mods and whatnot. Now what we're going to be looking at and paying a lot more attention to is the prefixes cannot be changed and suffixes cannot be changed. The thing about these two modifiers here is that prefixes cannot be changed as a suffix and suffixes cannot be changed as a prefix. So what that means is that essentially you could have 3 prefixes and then craft on prefixes cannot be changed, which is a suffix, and then you could also have another suffix, and then no matter what you did to these suffixes, including even scouring the item, so long as you don't just val it, the prefixes would be left unchanged no matter what, so long as this mod is there. The interesting part, and the thing that a lot of people do not know about these modifiers here, suffixes cannot be changed and prefixes cannot be changed, is that cannot be changed means that the ones that are currently on there cannot be changed, but it does not mean that you cannot add a new one. And that is going to be very, very important with the new post harvest nerf crafting. All right. So now that I've explained the baseline of it, let's get into some actual examples so that it makes a little bit more sense. So what I'm going to be looking at here is one that I've seen a lot post up on Reddit. A lot of people have been basically saying, oh no, you know, you can still deterministically get explode through the post-harvest nerf crafting, and they're not wrong. So let's talk about it. First things, we need to talk about the rule set of actually being able to force on a mod. So right now I'm looking at body armors with strength on it. So let's go ahead and go back to that. Body armors with only strength. Okay.
I can't carry anymore.
The way that we are going to be determined whether we are able to force on a mod or not is going to be very, very specific. There's only going to be a very limited amount of modifiers in the game which are actually going to respect the rule set that I'm about to give to you guys.
Hello.
The first set of rules, because there's basically going to be 2 different ones or 3 different ones, I can't quite remember. The first set of rules is that you can force on or guarantee any prefix or suffix on an item if the tag to that prefix or suffix is the only prefix or suffix with that given tag. Right? So that's going to be the first set of rule here. For example, and I'm going to go through and talk about a sword, actually. So we are going to be looking at a sword, which is going to be a warlord sword. Now, finding these mods is going to take a lot of work, and then, which is why I said this video is not going to include every single one of the possibilities that you do have, but I'm going to give you guys the rules for it. So in this example, we're going to be using a one-handed sword, and we're going to look at the speed tag. If you look at the speed tag on a one-handed sword, you will see that as prefixes, there is only a single prefix on a foil, or sorry, on a one-handed sword, which has the speed tag. This means that with the post-harvest crafting, we are able to force on this mod. Now, being able to force on this mod does not mean that we can force on T1. It just means that we can force on some mod within the given mod pool. Which means if we get the worst of the worst, we are stuck with the worst of the worst. There's nothing we can do about it. But the interesting thing here is going to be paying attention to the suffixes. Because the suffixes are also important in whether you can actually force on the mod or not. So let me go ahead and give you guys an example here. What I'm looking at right now is a foil which has Merciless and Flaring, which are 2 T1 stats. So in this case, what we're doing here, and T1 attack speed as well, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be locking our prefixes. Remember that if we lock the prefixes, no matter what we do, like even if we used a Scouring Orb right now on the foil, our prefixes would be safe, at least once, right? Because after that, because its prefixes cannot be changed and we scour it, we are scouring the suffixes. Therefore, the prefixes cannot be changed modifier is going to be going away. So if you scoured it again, well, it would, you know, be bricked. So this is going to be very important because if we go under harvest crafting and we use the reroll plus, which I mentioned earlier, we already have an attack speed modifier on the foil, right? Which means we cannot get other modifiers because this is obviously a warlord foil. So the only modifier that we can actually get if we augmented a speed modifier or if you're rerolled adding a speed modifier or including a speed modifier should technically be this one right here, right? So if I go to reroll and reroll plus is what it looks like on Wrath of Exile, and I did speed with prefixes cannot be changed, you will see that I will get this mod, but not every time. Okay, and this is going to be very, very important. So let's go ahead and I'll give you guys a few examples. See, this time I didn't get it. This time I didn't get it. This time I didn't get it. Didn't get it. This time I did get it, okay? So, why is it that sometimes you're going to get it and sometimes you're not going to get it? Well, it's very simple. To be able to guarantee that you would get this mod, right, would require not only to lock in your prefixes and make sure that this is the only prefix that you can get, but you also need to make sure that any of the other affix type, which would be suffixes in this case, are all present on the item. So the way that I would have to do this to guarantee that I actually get this mod here is to not only lock my prefixes, but also lock my suffixes. Because if I locked my suffixes and I have attack speed present on the item, and then I reroll, reforge the item with a guaranteed additional speed on speed affix on my item, if I already have attack speed, the only thing that I can get is going to be this speed hybrid here. Because of that, if I went with a foil that looked like this instead, where I have an open prefix, can have up to 3 crafted mods, and prefixes cannot be changed, but also suffixes cannot be changed. Now the only thing that I can get is going to be the hybrid attack speed modifier. Now here's the problem. In any of those cases where you also have a suffix with that given tag, right? Or multiple suffixes sometimes, or multiple prefixes with the tag of the modifier that you're trying to force, is that you are going to need to lock in your prefixes, but also your suffixes. In the cases where you need to lock in your prefix and your suffixes, the issue is that you need to multi-mod, which means you're multi-modding, which is a suffix. Prefixes cannot be changed, which is a suffix, and suffixes cannot be changed, which is a prefix. That means that in those cases, in any given scenario, you can only force on a single prefix or a single suffix. That's it, right? Because if you don't have these double blocks, which does require crafted modifiers, then it's going to be impossible to basically guarantee that the mod that you want you're going to get, but also that you don't break the mod, the other mod, if you do care about the other mod. Now I know that this is pretty complicated, which is why I said in my other video that for the average Joe, harvest crafting is going to be very, very difficult to take advantage to with the upcoming nerfs. For the 1%ers, such as myself, the very advanced crafters, the people who, play the game a ton, this is not that complicated. It's not that counterintuitive. But for, I'm sure, most of you guys watching right now, this is probably like absolute Chinese. But given enough time and practice on Craft of Exile, I'm sure that you can all figure it out pretty easily. Okay, so this was one example. Now let's go ahead and go to another example, and this is going to be a shield. Now, if you go with the shield and you look at defense modifiers on a shield, you will see that Shaper has only one suffix with the defense modifier tag. Crusader would not work because there's 2 of them. Redeemer would not work because there's also prefixes. It has to be Shaper. Now, remember what I said about the fact that if you have other stats, you need to have them locked in. Now, there's actually a little bit of an exception there. If the other stat that you have that has the same mod tag of the one that you're trying to get, if there are 3 of them, right, and this is going to be the second use case scenario, if there are 3, then the ability to get the other stat is not going to require basically to lock both your prefixes and your suffixes. It's only going to require you to lock in your prefixes, because there's no suffixes that you care about, and because you have 3 prefixes already, which means even if you reforge, there's no additional random prefix or no additional random suffix that can show up, because it's already locked in due to the fact that you have 3 affixes of that given type. So, if we look at a Shaper shield with triple energy shield prefixes, but it doesn't have to be energy shield prefixes technically, let's say actually I could instead have a prefix which would be like cold damage, right? I could have cold damage and double energy shield instead. It really wouldn't matter. If I reroll with prefixes cannot be changed, and I reroll plus defense modifier, that means that these prefixes that I have, the 3 of them, cannot be touched. Right? Even if I'm reforging, because the prefixes cannot be changed. But there's only one single option when
There is dark magic around here.
My army will destroy.
I need mana.
Yo, what's up everybody? It's Victim here with another Path of Exile build guide. Today I have an in-game super min-max build for you guys that kind of piggybacks off of the low-life Necromancer aura stacking build. This is kind of the absolute next level, even past a min-maxed version of that build. I would say this is the ultimate goal for a min-maxed build if you want to go carrion golems. It is absolutely insane. And definitely I want to let you guys know that I don't even have the full gear that you see right here in this path of building in that showcase that you guys were watching. And I could do all content in the game. I did that 100 and I think it was like 13% feared map, and it was just fine. And I did that with my quote-unquote baby version of the build. Now, full disclosure, I spent about 400 exalts on this quote-unquote baby version of the build. I'll kind of go over the differences between the baby version and this version that you're seeing right here, which is the absolute min-max
Join
version
my
of the build.
army of the
There's a guy out there that had a little bit different of a setup. I fixed a few, not necessarily fixed, but I changed a few things around that gave him a little bit more DPS and a little bit more physical damage reduction as well as evasion rating. But for the most part, I'm pretty confident that this guy had the absolute best carrion golem build out there. And I will put his POV.com in the description. Absolutely, this dude is fantastic. Check him out. You guys want to see kind of the base that I built this around to get these insane numbers, and then I kind of built my quote-unquote baby version around as well. So what we're going to do here is you guys kind of have to see the gameplay showcase. I'm actually not going to do a full build guide like I normally do. We're kind of nearing the point in the league where a whole lot of people have already quit, or they're kind of at the point where they're fully min-maxing their characters, kind of one of the two situations. So I think this is a guide more for those out there that are absolutely wanting to spend a ton of exalts, min-max your character because you don't have much else to do in the league. And I think those players don't really need a long guide to kind of go over things. More so just get the path of building, maybe get a couple things explained, see some gameplay footage, and hit it. So, if you guys are interested in that, stick around. If you don't even want to see that, you just want to grab that POV, that's totally cool as well. Go ahead and do that. Just remember that I have a baby version that's about 400 exalts, and I have this absolutely insane mega version that probably is going to cost around 600 to 800 exalts, I would say, to fully get this. And I've got to say, this has got to be the most insane build right now. This guy has. Look at these numbers, guys. We have 21 million DPS per carrying golem, so we're looking at over 100 million total DPS. Okay. We also have about 7,500 energy shield, which is pretty solid for this build. We also have 83% evade chance. We have 88% physical damage reduction, and we have 90% all fire, cold, and lightning resist, as well as chaos inoculation, so 100% chaos resist. It is insane. You have so many layers of damage reduction, and then you also have so good DPS. It's absolutely crazy. To put that in perspective, the gameplay footage that you guys saw in the video, I had about 12
Not
million
enough mana.
DPS per golem, maybe about 13 million. It's almost what, double that for this in-game, this app. I shouldn't even say in-game. This absolute mega min-maxed version is double the damage that you guys were seeing in the gameplay showcase. That's just how absolutely crazy it is. So let's kind of get into it, and I'll just kind of mention a few things. Again, I'm not going to go too crazy because I don't want to take up too much time, because I know you guys out there that are doing a build that's going to cost hundreds and hundreds of exalts probably know what you're doing already, so you just kind of want to grab the POB. But mention a couple things, right? On this build, we're definitely taking a whole bunch of 1% mana reduced reservation gems. That's actually where quite a big chunk of your currency is going to come from. I think probably it's about 120 to 150 exalts, depending on how good you want to make your jewels. Like, for example, you know, getting these with the 1% reduced mana reservation plus energy shield plus minion damage, those are a good 10 plus X. Unless you want to make them yourself, sure, you can do that. Straight up there at least 10x on all those, and some of these can get up to like this energy from within is probably like 15. The might of the meek and the intuitive leap, they're like 25 each. Pretty crazy for those, but every one of your jewels has to have the 1% reduced. Obviously, it's again Animal Stone, it's another 25. Now, as much as Watcher's Eye, this guy went with this Watcher's Eye, which is pretty solid. He went with Freeze while affected by Purity and Ice. I think some of the best ones to get, actually, he does have Speed by Grace on my build.
I need
version
mana.
of the build. I have Speed affected by Grace, and also you are phased while affected by Haste. I had that, which I liked quite a bit. The gain 9% of maximum mana with extra energy shield is nice, but it's absolutely not necessary. I think it gives you maybe a few hundred. And actually, you know what? Let me just double check real quick for you guys. I think we're not even running Haste. I'm sorry, we're not running Clarity. We took that off in order to, like I said, I changed a few things from this guy's build to give him a little bit different stuff. Yeah, so I took out Clarity and I put in Flesh Offering. And that gave him quite a bit of DPS.
My army will destroy.
So, just note that if you're going to go for this exact Watcher's Eye, like I said, I have this haste while affected by, or I'm sorry, phasing while affected by haste. There's a ton that you could get on this. Very solid. I'm sure you guys can probably pick up on which ones are good if you're spending this many exalts. So just note that you don't need that exact one. Let's see what else is quite important on the tree itself. Obviously, we're going with 3 clusters here instead of the normal 2, and we're doing that. We are going for the 90% over here. Very important to do that. If you don't get that, you will not get the 90%. I think that's probably it for over here. You guys can kind of just check that out. Normal setup for really the whole skill tree plus settings here. There's absolutely nothing crazy. I do know that we're not picking up these Rotten Claw nodes. We are a full level 100 build, 123. We don't need the Rotten Claws because we actually have, let's see, calculations. Yeah, we're at 100% pale chance without any of the Rotten Claws nodes. For our skills, I'm not sure if there's even anything I necessarily want to go over with you guys on this one. One of the big things, though, is the reason this build is so crazy is because we're also getting a whole bunch of physical damage reduction, right, at 88%, as well as the evasion chance, 83%. So a ton of evasion, a ton of physical damage, plus the normal, right, max fire or lightning and cold resistance that a normal build like this would have. So, and we're getting that by determination, divergent determination. Pretty solid. It's certainly nerfed from what it was lastly, but it is still very, very good. So we're getting determination, divergent, and we're putting that with enhance, level 4, and dread banner. And this is how we're getting, so it's level 2120 divergent dread banner. That's very important to get that divergent, because that enhance is going to go off of that divergent. And this is actually in a gloves. That is again, it's crazy gloves, but it's still with a plus 1 to level socket gem, so that's actually level 5 enhance. So pretty good right there. And let's go over to, and again, we have grace, right? And that's why that is the divergent determination. You and nearby allies gain 2% of evasion rating as extra armor. That's why we're having grace, so we have a ton of evasion rating, which gets turned into armor, which is why we have so much armor. We have 33,000 armor, pretty solid. Nothing really too crazy here. We actually fit in 14 auras with this build. 14 auras. Pretty insane. Pretty insane. Let's see here. I mean, just go through here, you guys. Like I said, if you guys are spending this much currency, you guys know what you're doing for the most part. Go in here, check it out. There's nothing too crazy. Pretty much everything is pretty standard. If you're just following this straight up. Obviously, if you guys have questions, feel free to ask in the comments. I'll definitely help you guys out. So moving on to the items, these are the absolute best in slot items that you can get for this build. And like I said, this is pretty much this guy's build that I found. That you can find his the link to his build in the description. This is pretty much all of his gear. I think I've changed like one or two things. So props to him. His build is absolutely awesome. He did a great job on this. So this is the top tier one that you guys can be getting right now. I have a guide to get this one if you guys want to check that. It'll be linked in the description as well. It's actually not that hard to craft. It costs a lot, but it's very simple to craft and straightforward. He has the best version of it with the tier 1 attack speed and also minion life. Super good on that. The big things here is the reduced mana reservation and the curse effect. Now, I guess I can mention here, some of these items I actually do not know how to craft, to be honest with you guys. I'm sure there's some big brains out there and you guys can figure it out. Definitely let us know in the comment section. I'm very curious. If you guys want to check my baby version of the build, all of those items are pretty easy to craft. They're actually not too bad to craft. And if you guys want, I can do individual crafting videos for all of the items that I made for my baby version of the build. We'll go over the baby version here pretty shortly. But I crafted every single item for my version of this build. And it really wasn't too bad. Obviously it costs a lot of currency, but it really wasn't too bad. So on my version, I do not have that level of all physical spell gems. I know how to get that. It's costly. It would cost another 50, probably 60 exalts, which I just don't have right now because I spent all my currency. I have no clue how he also got intelligence and a tier 1 energy shield roll. That's insane. This is an insane shield. The helmet is pretty straightforward. I did get this one myself. I did not. Actually, I don't think I got the +3 to level of socketed minion gems, but it's actually pretty easy to craft this. Basically, you're getting all of those suffixes, and then you are using re-roll the rare item, keeping suffixes, and you just re-roll it until you get the +3 and the level 20 minion life. I think I just stopped on level 20 minion life, and it also came with some other stuff, and I was happy with it. I didn't want to mess with it. But that's the helmet, pretty good. That is really helping you out for your specters, for your animate guardian, and for your zombies to stay alive. Not to mention they already have so much defenses, which is great, and they very rarely, if ever, die already. But make sure you get something on your helmet that has like the +3 or the minion life on there, and that really helps them. So our body armor, the sack of walls, obviously this is the in-game version of it, with the +1 to socketed gems.
Hey guys, what's going on? Eric here, bringing you guys some more D2 content. This time we're going over my comprehensive guide to Project Diablo 2. This is going to be mostly for beginners, but if you're already playing the game, you might learn something new as well. I'm going to have timestamps for each of these sections here in the descriptions, as well as links to descriptions that might have a little bit more detailed of a response. I'm not going to touch on every single bullet point in this presentation, so at any time you can pause the video and read a little bit more in depth. So let's get started. First of all, on the website, you're going to want to create an account for the website itself, and then within your managed accounts, this is where you'll create your account for the game itself. You don't actually create your account on the game when you download it. Before you install, you're going to want to duplicate your Diablo 2 folder. This way you don't lose any of your Lord of Destruction content. And there's going to be a 3-step process on the download page. And then if you guys have any issues, you can actually log into the Discord and then ask one of the developers for help. One of the tips I have here is to run as administrator. Quality of life changes. This isn't going to be everything, but these are the ones that stood out to me. For example, you can kill Cow King now and still open up cows over and over again, which is super great. Stacking, this is great as well. It saves a lot of space. Runes, gems, worldstone shards, a lot of the new content that's in the game, you can stack these. By default, gems and runes drop stacked, and you'll know they're stacked with the little cross icon. In order to split them, you just transmute them inside the cube. And then when it comes to rerolling charms, for example, you can put a whole 50 stack of gems in there along with your grand charm, and you can transmute that over and over again, and it'll chip away at that stack. And you can actually put 4 stacks of 50 in there as well, and that just saves a lot of time as opposed to putting 3 gems in there every single time you wanted to re-roll something. These hotkeys are great. My only suggestion is practice them in private first, especially if you're in a trade game. You don't want to actually drop your item to the ground. But pro tip, if you happen to be recording and somebody takes your item even though you dropped it accidentally, you can actually report them pretty easily. Another tip is the number 8 on your keyboard, not your number pad, will bring up your detailed list of like how much magic time you have, the breakpoints you're hitting, how much stack resist you have. And then also if you want to view somebody else's items, I think you just hover over their name, and then I think it's 0 or O. Totally brain farting here. Loot filter, I'm going to have a link in the description for the tutorial, as well as the one that I use. Some of the common features is there's now a feed of items. So let's say a burr room drops, it's going to show up in your feeds. So you just got to hurry up and open up your map, and there'll be a little dot on there, and you can grab it if you happen to be in a public game. And then also, which something that's really great is it reduces a lot of clutter. So let's say you're in hell, you have 2 million gold, and then normally a pile of 8 gold might drop. You're not going to see that. I'll just hide it because it's so inconsequential. As well as, let's say a 1-socketed sacred armor drops. What are you going to use that for? It's garbage, so it's hidden. Balance changes, huge here. Links in the description. The things I'm going to touch on are battle orders. So now it is just a static number instead of percentage. This applies to the rune word itself. So depending on the level, you'll just get a set increase in life. I think one of the only percentage increase to life is still, I think it's a jaw rune, and then you can also corrupt percentage increase life. Life cap has been removed from exiles and Drax gloves. You can still get it on the last wish rune word, which is still one of the best weapons for Ubers if you want to life tap those monsters. You can get life tap charges on a wand, but it's pretty weak. Teleport, huge. They nerfed Enigma like crazy, which is great. I feel pretty good about it. Now there's 3 charges. You can replenish every 6 seconds. Sorceress's base teleport has been nerfed pretty hard, but if you hit the higher breakpoints, it still feels pretty good. They also moved the 105 breakpoint into the lightning trees breakpoint, so you're going to need 117 to have that similar 105 experience. They've added similar teleport skills to Necromancer, Druid, Paladin, and then you'll notice in one of the common areas, Cold Plains, you cannot teleport because that is related to the path to key farming, which I'll touch later on in the video. Corruptions or slams, I'm going to have a link in the description here. Basically, you just cube a worldstone shards, which this is where they drop. You cube it or transmute it in the cube with your item. This is a possibility of what can drop or what can roll. If you happen to have a socketed item, that percentage to roll sockets gets added to your roll modifier. So if you have a 2-socketed weapon and you slam it, it now has a 75% chance to roll a modifier. Don't corrupt anything you can't afford to lose. I recommend always having a backup. So let's say you find a perfect Mara, it's 30 res, it's sick, you want to slam it, you might get 1 to all skills, and then you brick it or turn it into a rare item, and now it's gone. But let's say you have 2 Maras, you slam the first one, you get a mediocre corruption, now you can risk slamming that second one. So often you'll end up slamming items 2 at a time. Larzuk's puzzle box, this randomly drops. It kind of has a rarity to a high rune. There's the value, that's the amount of sockets, how to use it. Let's see, again, so like here's a really unique instance where you might puzzle box before corruption. So the best on slot Wind Force is going to be a 4-socketed puzzle boxed base, and then you can corrupt, like 120 damage and 20 attack speed on it. So you can puzzle box it, or you can risk and potentially get 6 sockets on a Wind Force as well. Crafting, link in the description. Lots of things have changed. They made certain gems and certain runes have a value now, which is great. They buffed a lot of these items, and then a lot of them can be best in slot. One of the big changes they made is Eth weapons now stay Eth. So I have a recent video where I crafted some blood weapons, and I ended up getting this insane throwing weapon. Also, class-specific items like shields, helmets, or weapons can roll with skills. So you can have like a necro head, and you can roll 2 to roll necro skills and 3 to poison nova, and then you can corrupt it and puzzle box it. So these can be best in slot for sure. Maps, this is huge. These are great. That's how to open, how to reroll, what to look for, what to avoid. I would say just avoid maps with succubus witches. They suck ass. Even if it has 200 magic find and huge density, rarity, I would say just avoid it for your sanity. You can actually also corrupt maps as well to increase those attributes. Zones, this is really great. I'm gonna have a link in the description. Multiple areas now that previously you might not farm. Now you can go kill bosses in that area, and everything in the game can drop, which is great. And then there's also a detailed breakdown of what immunities are in these areas. So let's say you wanted to build a fire sorceress. One of the best areas to farm TC 85 area is Stony Tomb now, because there's no fire immunes. Maybe might be like a rare monster pack that might have one, and then your mercs can take care of that character. But that's really great changes. Uber's big changes here. Keys can drop in 2 different locations. The torch has been nerfed to only +1 to all skills, plus instead of all stats, it's actually just vitality and energy. There's the recipe. Something that's great is now you can do any 3 organs. So you have 3 horns. You don't have to open up portals and kill those specific bosses. This makes things so much better. Also, they found a use for standard of heroes. Now you can corrupt those with maps and increase the experience density and magic find on those maps. Diablo clone, big change here, no longer randomly spawns in the game. There is where the recipe and where those items drop. That's how to open them. Annie was nerfed as well, not to have all stats. Now it just has vitality and energy. And then huge incentive to be able to build up a character to kill Diablo clone, because Diablo clone has 5 unique items to him that only he can drop, that can drop when you kill him, and even the chance for them to drop is super rare. So if you can build a D-clone killer, you're going to be rich. Mercenaries, great changes here. They can wear gloves, belts, boots now. There were some balance changes to the skills they have. So like, for example, an Act 1 Merc has meditation now. Those same Mercs can wear Amazon-only weapons and crossbows. Act 5 Mercs can wear full IK set, which is super cool. And then if they have the full set, they can benefit from those full set attributes. Players' difficulty, this is a big change to drop rates. By default, it's going to be set to players 5, so you're going to have an increased chance of drops, better chance of finding runes. And then if you do happen to be in a full game with 8 players, it's going to feel more like players difficulty 9. So it still scales based on the amount of players in the game. And then still only in single player, if you happen to be playing Pluggy or just regular single player, you can still set the difficulty on your own. If you guys have any questions, leave a comment. If I've missed anything or messed anything up, leave a comment as well. I might create a running pinned comment with changes. Yeah, if you guys enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you guys want to see more from me, I'm definitely going to be playing Season 2. Subscribe. All right, bye.
Like, it belongs in some game. It's not Diablo 2 or Diablo 3 or Diablo 4. But I don't think he's saying that either, right?
It just feels like Diablo 2 is already straying away from that. As the action comes into the RPG, it's straying away from more of the RPG, traditional RPG-ish realism and survival elements, to put more of a focus on the action and the combat. And at least to me, the most important RPG-ish elements in an ARPG is the character development and the builds and the gearing. To me, I want that part of it super fleshed out. Like, that's what's most interesting to me. It's not so much the realism aspect of those micro decisions, but more like, I only have this many skill points. How am I gonna build this character? You know, build trees, skill trees, all of these RPG mechanics of different forms of progression. To me, that's like the really exciting RPG stuff. Not that I'm fundamentally opposed to like the more realism stuff. For anyone wondering,
Turn-based
Dungeons and
combo.
Dragons has been my favorite hobby since forever.
Nerd.
More than Diablo.
What up?
Yo, Mr. Llama.
There he is. I figure, you know what? We can play tag and do a turn-based React game here, or we can just finally bring you in, and then that'll be way easier.
kind of dig the turn-based Reacts though.
I mean, it was
in those old school D&D RPG elements, right?
It's fun, right? Yeah, I love it. There you go. Old school. Diablo 1 was gonna be turn-based, right? You know that.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Apparently Brevik in an afternoon changed that to real time,
Yeah.
and thus the ARPG was born.
Exactly. All right, perfect. We got it all set up here. Cool. Yeah. So, how much time do you have, so I know what to budget for and what to account for? How much time do you want to spend on this?
I mean, so I'm pretty flexible. It's mostly just in general in the evenings. Like I finished supper and everything, but like
Okay.
I want to spend some time with my fiance before she heads to bed.
I don't understand.
But like
what
I
that-
have at least half an hour. I mean, I don't know if we have half an hour of stuff to talk about, but like I don't know how much time do you?
How do you say that? I don't know what that is.
Fiance? My soon wife, I guess.
Oh, a soon wife. Okay, that doesn't
Pre-wife.
That still doesn't resonate with me. Anyway, I thought we just played video games.
Cathos wedding band too.
Okay, is that the person that you talk to about Diablo 2 when the stream is off and you're still? I never got that far in the IRL RPG game. So random. Thank you so much. Mwah. Okay, so yeah, no, we have plenty to talk about. So where should we start? I think we have things. We've got like, obviously we have potions, cooldowns, D3 versus D2, RPG, ARPG, differential, and futures, and all of that. I mean, do we want to start broad and kind of dig in there? I haven't gotten to see your entire reaction because it was like 2 hours.
Oh, it was longer than that. Don't worry.
I was like, I thought it was like 10 minutes, and I'm just like watching through it, and I look and I'm like, when does this end? Well, it's great. It's super fun. But yeah, so I guess I'd love to hear from you. And chat, this is Riker. Twitch.tv/RYHKKER or YouTube. He's a big YouTuber. Sometimes just stuff on Twitch here and there. I don't know how often you're streaming nowadays versus YouTubing. But very cool guy, and we're going to keep it respectful, chat. But he represents, I like to say, he represents the Diablo 3 half of Diablo, I suppose. And so he's also got great ideas, but I think there's a lot we agree on, and I think there's some that we disagree on, and that's totally fine. You can be adults and agree and disagree on stuff, and things are okay. So yeah, so I'd love to hear, I suppose, a little bit more in regards to Diablo 3, the current state of ARPGs, where you feel they're at, where you feel they're lacking, where they should be going, kind of all of that.
Yeah, so thank you for the intro, by the way.
Right.
Yeah, so, and I think this sort of touches a bit upon kind of something you hit upon in your React. You hit upon something very poignant at the end where you're talking about kind of moving things towards a slower direction. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of representing the fast-paced, but I don't know that I'm necessarily like that's the way I want things to go. I just see that's how they have gone. So if we're looking at these sort of mechanics, I become concerned about a game that might lose its identity between the two, where it's not sure if it wants to be fast or slow. So we've seen, you know, over the years, the ARPGs have evolved to be faster. That's what has happened. Whether that's good or bad, I'm willing to, you know, I'm open to a slower paced game.
Okay.
What I wouldn't want though is slower paced elements in a fast paced game. I think that's when it creates that sort of confusion of identity.
Right.
So like right now, endgame in D3 and PoE, super fast,
Very
blitzing through maps. You would know more than me, but in D2, I think endgame can be pretty fast, not as fast, but still faster than.
It has speed
you know,
to
that's
it for
one
sure.
campaign.
Yeah. Thank you. Diablo 2 Endgame. I mean, the biggest thing when I talk about like fast and speed and things of that, and when I compare Diablo 2 to PoE, whatever it is not exactly. It's do I care about what I'm fighting or not? I think that's the best way that I can put it. In Diablo 2, even when I'm end game, high level character, all of this stuff, my level 98 died yesterday to a giant pack of Oblivion Knight and their minion with Might Aura and all of this crap. It was terrible. I got one shot.
Is that hardcore?
No, it's softcore. Thankfully, I would be wearing way more survival gear if it was hardcore, though. I'm playing like super MF like crazy, but
I still lose a lot of XP though, right?
Oh yeah, no, it still sucks. Like I lost like 8 hours or something at least. So like for me, that's the big thing is Diablo 2. What I love, and I said that in that video. What's so iconic, so beautiful about the game is that every monster you care about. Is it a doll? Is it a soul? Is it a death lord? Is it, you know, like any monster anywhere? Oblivion Knights, like they all have meaning and importance because one, they're all immune to something in hell. There's like almost nothing that's not immune, just like 1 or 2 monsters. So they're all immune to almost something in hell. So you can't kill a third of them basically without some help or changing your skill build up or using your merce or whatever it is. And I'm not advocating for immunities completely in here, but I'm saying it makes monsters matter a lot more. But also just the speed at which your skills travel, their skills travel, all of these things. You know, and so it just like has so much meaning there. And that was something that I found with PoE is like, I couldn't even tell you what the monster was. It was dead before I could even see it. Everything just blew up. And while the boss fights I found were really fun and super interesting and way better than Diablo's boss fights and stuff, all of the regular clear, the maps, all of this stuff, it didn't matter until something was reflect and it was off screen and then I just died and I was like, wait, what killed me? And it was like, oh, okay. You know, and I don't have a ton of D3, you know, endgame knowledge, but I felt like I also didn't super care when I did play it. Like that was many years ago, but even then I didn't feel like the monsters themselves had this really big weight and importance and you know, all of this. It was just like dodge the beams and that was kind of it, you know. And just gather everything together into little, you know, groups. And then so I don't know, and you can give me more of the D3 piece of that, but that was my like experience and why when I look at something in the future, when I say I want to slow it down, I say I want to slow it down enough to where like if that's an archer pack or that's a lightning wisp or that's a what, you know, pit lord, like I want to care about that because I move slow enough, their attacks, my attacks, everything, that I need to like move around and be really like strategic in how I'm fighting every kind of monster.
Yeah, I'm totally behind that idea. That's actually one of the things that I liked about Wolcen, which came out a few months ago and kind of, but one thing I thought that it was doing well was that the combat itself, the monsters that you fight, they're challenging, at least before release. I don't know now, they've issued some patches and stuff, maybe made it easier, I'm not sure, but I felt like every time I would engage a pack of enemies, the time to kill was slow.
Yep.
Not super slow, but slow enough to matter. I'm 100% for having those enemies not be just blobs of hit points that disappear.
Right.
That the engagements matter. PoE has that interesting dichotomy where it's either they instantly incinerate, or it's the really tough bosses.
Right.
It's kind of one or the other there.
Right.
With D3, the vast majority of what you're doing is speedrunning and nothing matters. And then if you're pushing, the monsters matter, but not for the right reasons. It's like, okay,
They
these
matter
guys
for
are a lot of
experience,
XP.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They for the progression and the rift. Yeah, we can say
Right.
XP. It's the same thing, but
Right.
you also care about the elite affixes, which again, it's not identity of the monster, as it is what is the the D2 example would be, is it fire immune?
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see there being less of that identity when the monsters are being deleted, and D4 seems like it's going in the right direction. They say they want to slow down the game. The whole focus on monster families is very
Cool.
interesting, really cool dynamics of having these monster types that are going to synergize. I love the idea of that. My fear is they're putting all this development effort into these monster families, and they say they want the game to be slower paced, but what's going to happen after 1 or 2 years? Are we going to have the same thing happen like all modern ARPGs, where it ends up speed meta, and then all
Path
this
of
development
Exile
effort goes to
started
nothing 'cause
slow.
the monsters are deleted instantly.
Path of Exile started
Yeah.
slow. Diablo 3 started out a lot slower, and then
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, even Diablo 2. Did you watch my 1.0 run at all?
I heard about it. I didn't have a
Okay.
chance to check it.
Okay, so I did 2 1.0 runs, and it is fascinating how much slower it is compared to it is literally speed meta completely. Diablo 2 now versus Diablo 2 then, because like back then, experience was way harder to get. You couldn't buy mana potions, so if you were like a sorceress or whatever it was, you just had to wait for your mana to regen, or you would go to town and go talk to Akara every single time that you needed to refill your mana. And so it was slow. And so there's power creep in it for sure. But it started off very slow, and it crept and got to a place that I feel like was still okay, right? Where you still cared about everything. Whereas I feel like in the other games, the power crept to where nothing else mattered, and it was just, here's your gear, and now you shred everything, sort of things. Something that somebody made a comment of that I really loved was they said, when Mr. Llama does a build guide, he talks about all of the different challenges that character will face along the way, and how you have to, using that specific character, go through and deal with those challenges, right? So this character is going to have a lot of difficulty in Act 3 because there's a lot of lightning immunes and blah, 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 this. So you're going to need to like use this and attack this way and maybe get this extra skill, all of this stuff. And then as opposed to when Riker does a guide for Diablo 3, it's here's all of the gear you need and the how you'll set your skills and everything there. And it doesn't have anything or near as much to do with like the combat and the like challenges that the character will face when you go out into the world.
Very true, yeah.
And I think that right there is a good representation of it, of like where I think slow versus fast and what matters versus what doesn't matter. When I get a guide, I want somebody to have to explain to me how to play this character and where the good and the bad and all of the trouble in the combat and the areas and all of that stuff really matters, as opposed to here's your gear, here's your skills, now you can shred everything and just get going sort of stuff. And I mean, feel free to once again disagree, because that's content. Feel free to disagree,
Well, I mean, I guess I'll
with any
jump
piece
in
of
to
that.
say that there could be builds that are that do need to be explained. There are some builds that are really just self-explanatory and don't need to be explained. There are others that the rotation needs to be explained, or exactly how all the skills synergize and when best to use them needs to be explained. But yeah, I can't really think of anything that it's like you have to explain situationally, depending on the monster type, okay, fighting this monster, you have to do this. It is sort of one size fits all. Like, once you understand how the mechanics of the build works, yeah, as for the specifics of fighting different monsters, it's not like, well, this is weak versus, you know, lightning resistant monsters or anything like that.
Right. I really hope they bring that back. When, like, immunities maybe too far, but I really hope they bring monsters that are like 90% like lightning res, whatever, fire res, cold res into the game, so that you could make your way through everything, but it'll be way harder, and then you'll have to get that same sort of focus on those monsters. What do you think about that? I mean, that's my personal take, is I'm like, I would love if they brought like 95% resistance on a bunch of different monsters that made me consider how I fought them, you know, with a different character, whatever it is.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where it depends on what the fundamental kind of game is. If it's an idea that in principle sounds interesting to me, but if that were added to D3 today, all that means is, well, I'm going to skip those monsters.
Sure.
So if the result is that, then I don't think that's good, because we have in D3, like, if it's a Juggernaut, skip it. If it's this, skip it. Because it's just not worth your time, and you can skip the content. But if it were in a game where you cannot do that and you're forced to adapt, right, then I could get behind that idea. So it sort of depends on what fundamental game we end up with. Because when there are things, I want it to be that we're making intelligent decisions and not just, I'm not going to do this content, and that's my decision.
But you also in Diablo 3 don't have a mercenary that actually can like deal with that stuff either, right? Like,
correct.
You're dealing with everything. In Diablo 2, I can have my mercenary solo the entire game at this point. Like, he's so stacked.
That's
and
awesome.
if I just like, you know, babysit him, give him potions, and, you know, make sure he doesn't get in the middle of stuff, but like, I could, you know, walk him through. And so for those kinds of monsters, having that mercenary is part of your build almost, right? What kind of mercenary do you want to use to deal with maybe some of those immune monsters or high res monsters? Or, you know, is there some sort of run multi-spec damage types, run firewall and frozen orb, whatever it is, so that you can like deal with that as well? And some of those monsters are mandatory, right, in the game, but some of them you can skip as well. So something that I do want to get your opinion on is what you were talking about rifts, and you have, for those who don't know, you have greater rifts in Diablo 3, and they're basically like timed challenges. You have to get enough experience within the rift and kill the boss within a certain amount of time. And personally, I really dislike the idea of bringing a time element into any of this, because then that shoves builds into speed builds and everything goes towards that speed meta. I can play a slower build that does a lot of damage and whatever, but if it's not fast enough, I'll never be able to push greater rifts to the level that a faster character could or whatnot. So I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah. So the time that we're given to do a greater rift is 15 minutes, which is not fast. If you're pushing and it's taking you 15, you're on a slow, methodical build. There's two main ways that people play greater rifts. One is speeding them in under 5 minutes, in which case you want a speed build. And then the other is when you're really pushing your limits at the hardest content of the game. 15 minutes is quite a bit, and you can be on a slow as a snail build. If you're not doing the content in 15 minutes, you probably just don't have enough DPS.
Right.
Is really what it comes down to. I like having different activities that can reward different types of builds and styles of play. There's too much focus on the speed meta, I feel. The most rewarding thing to do in D3, in PoE, is the speed meta, like, the vast majority of the time.
Right.
Very rarely do we find ourselves really pushing through the slow content, because there's just not enough reward over time for it. But having a greater balance in what is rewarded Like, I don't know that I would want. Well, again, depending on what kind of game we make,
Right.
Like, I would be totally for having some builds that need, some content that you're gonna push through with the slower build. Maybe some content that you go through more quickly, and just having different types of endgame activities will maybe necessitate different builds from you to have different playstyles represented.
Right. So yeah, so I definitely, when I mean speed, I'm speaking about DPS a lot, and I think that's a big focus that I really hate in Diablo 3. I dislike that I dislike a lot in Diablo 3 is that everything feels like it's DPS, and it like. Every stat on an item feels like it's DPS. Every, the like timer forces there to be a lot of DPS. DPS is damage per second, chat. Like everything just pushes towards more and more DPS. So for instance, if I just picked a random item, Kayoshiro's Blade. Properties, 392 DPS. 628 to 750 dexterity, which is just more damage. Magic properties, 981 to 1175 elemental damage. Unique ability increases the damage wave of light by 150%. When the initial impact wave of light hits 3 or fewer enemies, the damage is further increased by 200 to 250%. It's just like damage, and damage. And I would love to see a shift in the items, in the play, and this is where that timer is, right? That timer says you need to have a certain DPS or you're not going to get out of this rift. And as opposed to maybe there's some, I go up and just try a Greater Rift 150 and I run this like real low DPS build and it takes me 2 hours to get through it. But like I'm able to get through it. Like I'm not allowed to run that build because of the time limitations, because of whatever. I need to increase my DPS to do so. Whereas for me, I think it's way cooler if I can grind at whatever pace I can, right? If I'm going through the Chaos Sanctuary and it's this slow, difficult, I'm fighting one monster at a time and kiting them back and all of this stuff, and it takes me 3 hours and I finally kill Diablo and I'm like, that was awesome. What a cool experience. But if I'm going through there and I get to the first seal and then it times me out and it's like, well, you didn't do enough damage, try again, then I'm like, oh, okay. It's like this artificial limit that just the whole focus of D3 feels very much like DPS focused. And I would love to see more focus on less speed and more, having items have those weird properties, have those chance for Frost Nova so that you have chance to proc CC and just kind of weird stuff on there. Things that get you those stats to wear your other gear and all sorts of things that are very much in this just style. Of some DPS elements, but also some other elements giving you hit recovery, giving you block chance, giving you whatever, right? Life, mana, yada yada.
Well, you're forgetting about one very important stat on Diablo 3 items that I'm sure you'd love.
Crit strike.
Cooldown reduction.
Oh, cooldown reduction too. God.
But no, so it is true. Everything is very DPS focused. Like Diablo 2 has much more interesting itemization, like 100% for sure. The item attributes are more interesting, they're more meaningful. Everything, basically, the itemization in D3 is like a salt system. It has been, you know exactly where to get all your DPS slots, where to get all your max toughness slots, and the only thing that really shakes that up is if you're running a build that needs certain cooldown benchmarks, then you got to sacrifice some DPS for cooldown, but for the most part, it's pretty straightforward, and having more interesting stuff definitely be appreciated. As for the timed content, I mean, theoretically, if you just play a regular Rift and not a Greater Rift, you can take 2 hours to do it. No one's gonna stop you. Greater Rifts have become sort of the end all be all in D3.
Right.
But
I guess that's just all I know.
I guess
is
the only
everybody
bit of timed content.
Yeah. that's just what everybody talks about and everybody does and everybody, you know,
Yeah.
nobody talks about like, oh, I did Rift, blah blah blah. You know, like nobody cares. It's like, what's your greater
Exactly.
Rift?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why we need more. We need more different activities to do at the end that aren't all focused on the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. What other thoughts do you have? I mean, you just talked about cooldown reduction. So let's hash out the cooldown stuff just fully right here.
Totally.
Let's
So
hear
totally
it.
agree with you. Long cooldowns. Nope. Don't like that at all. I don't even know that I would necessarily argue for cooldowns. I was just the reason I watched your first video on stream, because I've watched your other feedback videos and I pretty much agree with everything. But I had heard in that one that you were going to talk about cooldown and potions, and I'm like, oh well, here's something that I could maybe have a bit of a different opinion on.
Right, content.
But like just to play devil's advocate for cooldown, yeah, exactly. Like 5-10 second cooldown on a skill that is for strategic use, mostly defensive stuff, like, yeah, it's okay. I don't know that I would argue like that it must be in the game,
Right.
but I think cooldowns can be done well. I don't like how they're done in D3, but I could see there being some argument made that there's some merit that could be had there.
So when I look at cooldowns, there's a couple things that I see from it. I love cooldowns in a game with PvP. That focuses on PvP, I should say. Because a game that focuses on PvP creates a game where your opponent now is smart enough to punish you, right? So look at Dota 2, right? I don't know if you've played any Dota 2 or MOBAs, but like, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I have a stun once every 8 seconds. I have an ultimate once every 100 seconds, right? Things like this that can shift and change the entire swing of a battle. And yet, they become so important because, oh, I wasted my ultimate. Now the other team knows that for 100 seconds I don't have that, and they can take, Roshan. They can push the tower. They can do whatever because they're not worried about it. Or, if they are worried about it, now they have to play this entirely different. They're more spaced out. How they're trying to siege is this entirely different thing because they're always aware of my ultimate ability, whatever it is, right? So I love cooldowns in those games whenever there's that PvP focus, because then as soon as you miss something, as soon as you shoot something, whatever it is, they know, okay, that skill's on cooldown now, and they can then take advantage of that. So I love a cooldown in that regard. In a game where there's just mindless AI, I don't see the point of the cooldown, because it just creates this like I said, kind of this cycle, right? Diablo 3, when you're explaining a build and creating a build, you just kind of like, maybe you go through the cycle that the character will do. Right, so you're gonna do this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then that's off cooldown. So you do this again, and like, you just kind of like go through your cycle of it. But I don't feel like you get good engagement from it. They're not taking advantage of you using a spell, and over here and not over here. They're just all charging at you, trying to kill you always, right? So,
well, I mean, there are cases where you might be expecting like a big damage spike, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
like I said, I think
the only like
diamond
usage case of cooldowns that I.
Oh, sorry. You go ahead.
Sorry.
just go ahead. We're just hitting on each other.
Yeah. So I think like the only usage case that I could really argue for having short form cooldowns would be. First off, you need enough, abilities that are based on your resource, be it mana, be it whatever. But sometimes you reach a point where it's like, okay, well, this is a cool ability, but it's not worth me taking if it's consuming the same resource as these other skills. But if it's on a cooldown instead, then okay, yeah, I can work this into my build, and it's another thing that I can use situationally, because it's not, it's not important enough that it's worth sacrificing mana for instance.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. For me, I don't think Diablo 2 is perfect here either. I think this is an area that Diablo 4 could really improve on overall. Is, you know, Diablo 2 definitely gets to be more into that spam your one skill, whatever it is, and a lot of this comes from the fact of synergies and how much they implemented in, like, you know, you create an ultimate build that's like Blizzard, and everything is Blizzard, Glacial Spike, Ice Blast, Ice Bolt, Cold Mastery, right? You've dumped all of your skills into this, and so now all you have are those skills, and you just use Blizzard and maybe Ice Blast for single target DPS, and maybe Glacial Spike for AoE. And I still think it ends up being really fun, but I do think that could be made in a cooler way, right? I think there's definitely a possibility of, you know, allow me to open that build up a little bit more. Maybe there's synergies don't require all of my skills for this ultimate build. And so, you know, maybe like I run Blizzard and I can also run Meteor and I can also run Nova, and then I can really start to use, you know, those skills in their various areas, depending what monster I'm fighting, depending whatever it is, and I can kind of decide how much I want to do with, you know, each of those, and to the point where maxing out one thing is only going to get you so far, and so you're going to do some more, you know, you're going to switch it up here and there. So there's, you know, there's something there that can be improved upon for sure in Diablo 4, but I think the cooldown is the wrong way to do it, I guess, right? I think forcing you to use another skill because you can't use that skill since it's on cooldown is kind of boring, a boring solution, and allowing you to spam one skill all the time and that being completely effective is also a little bit of a boring solution. I think the best solution is creating skills that are so unique that they have their use cases in every different area. And so it becomes this idea of, do I want this quick shot? Do I want this skill that maybe has a wind up or a slower casting speed? Do I want this skill that has this big AoE? Do I want this skill that has a chill effect? Do I want this, right? Like, and Diablo 2 has that somewhat, right? Like, let's say I'm running my Blizzard, my current level 98 sorceress. She has Blizzard. She uses teleport for her movement skill, obviously. She has Blizzard, she has Glacial Spike, she has Ice Blast, she has Static, and she has Fireball. And so I kind of shift between those skills depending on what type of monster I'm fighting, where the grouping is, all of that. But I'm still main DPSing Blizzard, so I think there could still be some improvement there. But I just really hate the cooldown idea of it, because I think it's just you're no longer letting me make that decision, right? I'm all about decisions, and with that, I don't get to make the decision anymore. I'm just being told that this isn't allowed.
Yeah, it's a really fair point. I know that when I first played D3 and I saw cooldowns, I hated the idea of it. I've become okay with it. I still dislike the super long cooldowns. I hope those don't make it into D4. I tolerate short cooldowns, but like what you described out, having different skills equipped for different situations, I think that makes for exciting gameplay. The way D3 works, you have one damage skill. Like all the time, you just have one skill.
Right.
One of your 6 equipped skills is your DPS, and everything else is supporting the build. And your build is something that is supposed to be able to deal with pretty much all situations. It's not like, okay, I have this other damage skill in reserve for this usage case, which would be cool, but it's just not the way the itemization works out. You're rewarded for dumping all your DPS into one skill, which relegates your other 5 into somehow supporting your build, be it through grouping enemies, be it through defensive buffs, offensive buffs, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's improvement there from both games. to go forward with it. Okay, now it's your turn. I want you to drop some hot opinion on us here.
A gift for you.
Oh, let's see.
What do you got? Hot takes with Riker. If not, I can bring something else.
Oh man, my mic mute. I'm sorry about that. I don't know how long I was muted for.
It was a good 20 seconds, maybe.
Yikes! What was the last thing I said?
Nothing. You didn't respond at all.
Wonderful. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah. So the big thing that, for me, I think will probably be like the hottest take. Was about potions. None of that came through at all. No. Okay. So.
Oh no, you said
so
nothing.
Potions. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. So the potion system. Is probably like the thing that is my hottest D2 take. That I really don't like the D2 potion system. The things that I do like about it is picking, between what kind of resources you want. But the aspect that I don't like is having, you could choose to have a bunch of potions cluttering up your inventory and not just your belt slot. And then you're making the choice between convenience of having more room to pick up items or saving yourself trips to like get more potions. And
Right.
if the potions are like all in the belt slot or there's some other way to manage it, like I'm a lot more okay with potions, but yeah, I think that's like my hottest take.
Okay. So you, I guess, lay out more your like ideal potion setup scenario here, because I think we actually agree with this. To be honest.
Yeah, probably. So I think we both like the idea of PoE flasks in principle, but the implementation has worked out to be unfortunate in that it's
very unfortunate.
spamming. We don't want that.
No.
Yeah. So what things that I like itemization slots. So turning potions into more itemization slots, very interesting to me. Making choices over what kind of potions to have. Having potions or flasks with affixes. I love affixes. But yes, them being mandatory to be spamming because they give you some buff that you always want up in combat is taking it too far. Definitely agree with you about the 30-second cooldown on the potion just kind of encourages you to play it safe for 30 seconds and then re-engage, which is not desirable.
Right.
Gameplay. Yeah, so if it could be made into itemization and then have some way of it replenishing that does not allow you to just, I guess, go back and like buy more or whatever. I think we agree that no boss fight, teleporting out, rebuying potions. I think we agree that it's good to have the boss fights be a self-contained thing.
The D2 potions are legendary.
Yeah, other than that, I don't have a solid idea. I know what I don't